A look at Torah portion Vzot Habracha. The Torah portions are actually tiny Torah portions this week. So verse 1 says, "And this is the blessing with which Moshe, the man of Elohim, blessed the children of Israel before his death." Now, if we go back to the beginning of the Torah, we see it says in Genesis 1:27, Elohim created the man in his image. In the image of Elohim, he created them, male and female, he created them. And Elohim blessed them. Okay, so right at the beginning of the Torah, we've got Elohim blessing mankind. And he's blessing all of mankind at this point. Where we're at in the Torah portion, Moshe is blessing some of mankind. He's blessing the seed of Israel, the children of Israel. So what we have is going from all of mankind being blessed, seemingly to only the children of Israel being blessed. That seems a little bit weird. In Genesis 12, 1-3, it says, "And Yehovah said to Abraham, go yourself out of the land, from your relatives, from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I make you a great nation and bless you and make your name great, and you be a blessing. And I bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. And blessed in you have been all the clans of the earth." Okay, so it's not actually him taking the blessing from mankind and not blessing all of mankind. It goes to Abraham. And in Abraham, then all of the nations will be blessed, because from Abraham came Yitzchak, and then through Yitzchak, it was Yaakov, Yisrael. They're the people being blessed here. But in Israel, in the person Israel, all those who come from him spiritually, they will all be blessed. So this is actually a blessing that is going to all mankind, although it seems to only be to the children of Israel. Yehovah's blessings are only ever to those who are obedient. Anyway, we saw the curse come on Adam and Eve as soon as they were disobedient. Galatians 3:8-9 says in the scripture, "Having foreseen that Elohim would declare right the nations by belief, announced the good news to Abraham beforehand, saying, all the nations shall be blessed in you. So that those who are of belief are blessed with Abraham the believer." Okay, so it hasn't changed. He told them what he required. He blessed them. Then they went astray into disobedience, and the curse came upon them. For us, it's exactly the same. We're offered exactly the same blessing. Just be obedient, walk in the ways of life, and you'll have the blessing, just like Abraham. And he said, Yehovah came from Sinai and rose from Seir for them. He shone from Mount Paran and came with 10,000s of set-apart ones at his right hand, a law of fire for them. Indeed, he loves the peoples. All his set-apart ones are in your hand. And they sat down at your feet, receiving your words. Okay, so we've got the idea, all mankind blessed. Then we've got the children of Israel blessed. And what I'm saying is that this blessing goes to all of them who are in Abraham or in Israel. And we see confirmation of this here. I mean, it's all the way through Scripture, but it's right here at the beginning of the Torah portion as well, just as he begins to bless them. He loves the peoples, it says. And in a lot of translations, you're not going to get that. What you're going to get is he loves the people, talking of Israel, or seeming to talk of Israel. But it doesn't say he loves Ha'am, the people. It says he loves Ha'amim, the peoples. Okay? All his set-apart ones. And they wouldn't have understood this, I don't think, at this point, that he loves all of the peoples. He loves all of his set-apart ones, those who are set apart from the world, amongst the nations. And they sat down at your feet, receiving your words. Moshe commanded us a Torah, an inheritance. Again, it's the inheritance is where his inheritance is to be the apple of our eye, as we are the apple of his eye. But it's an inheritance of the assembly of Yaakov. Okay? That word assembly there is kehilah, from kahal. Okay? And the kahal, when you take it into Greek, is ecclesia. It's the church. So what it's saying is he loves the nations, all of his set-apart ones, an inheritance not of the children of Yaakov, not of his physical descendants, but inheritance of the church of Jacob. That's what it's saying. And he was king in Yeshurun when the heads of the people, now we've got Ha'am, the people, Am Yisrael, okay? When the heads of the people were gathered, the tribes of Yisrael, so it's gone now from speaking of the nations and it's talking about the people. Now this passage that we're about to hear, this word Jeffrey H. Tigay, Emeritus A.M. Ellis Professor of Hebrew and Semitic Languages and Literatures in the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations, he had this to say. He said, it's full of rare words, syntactic difficulties, grammatical inconsistencies, and opaque allusions. And this is a difficult passage, okay? In the Hebrew, it's a difficult passage. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to iron out some of these syntactic difficulties that we can find in the Hebrew. Also, bear in mind that this guy is a professor of languages. He's not somebody, as far as I know, who has knowledge of the scriptures, who has knowledge of Elohim. And it makes such a massive difference when you've got a doctrinal understanding, because then you're able to translate things properly, whereas this guy is just coming from a dry linguistic point of view. So he says, let Reuven live and not die, and let his men be numbered. Okay? What does it mean, let his men be numbered? Okay, we're going to count the men of Reuven? Is it wishing that his men would be counted? We can understand let Reuven live and not die because Reuven slept with his father's wife, and the penalty for that is the death penalty. So perhaps asking for release from this in some way. Let his descendants live and not die, unlike him. Well, it says let his men be numbered. If we go to the Septuagint version, we get a much better understanding of this. Okay, in the Hebrew, the tribe of Shimon is not mentioned. In these blessings, the tribe of Shimon is never mentioned. And I've heard people, we've gone through them before, go through explanations of why Simeon are not included in this. Okay? But if we go to the Septuagint version, we're given a much easier answer. Let Reuven live and not die, and let Simeon be many in number. Okay. Pretty easy to understand there. We can iron out, because the way that it's phrased in the Hebrew, it doesn't quite fit, and there's a lot of these things that don't quite fit. Verse 7 says, and this of Yehudah, he said, listen Yehovah to the voice of Yehudah, and bring him into his people. Listen to his voice and bring him into his people. Is it talking about Mashiach? Undoubtedly, some of this is talking about Mashiach. But when I was reading this, I was looking at the Hebrew and I was thinking, it's almost like it's trying to say, listen to the voice of Judah and to his people. It's almost like it's saying that. And then as I was a little bit into this, I checked something out in the Septuagint version to see what it said, and it was different. And then I went back and looked at all of these verses that I've been struggling with to try and understand. And I was like, oh, they make a lot more sense now. Verse 7, and this for Yehudah, listen, O Yehovah, of the voice of Judah and unto his people. Makes loads more sense, doesn't it? Listen to his voice, listen to the voice of his people as well. May they enter in. His hands shall litigate for him. Okay, his hands contend for him. In other words, his deeds, the things that he does, are in accordance with the law. They bear witness for him, the things that he does before Yehovah. And a helper from his enemies you will be. And of Levi, he said, your Tumim and your Urim belong to your faithful one. And the Tumim and the Urim were basically kind of like them casting lots. It was a means by which they could get a decision from Yehovah. And we see them in operation in Nehemiah 7:63. It says, and of the priests, sons of Chaviah, sons of Koth, sons of Barzillai, who took a wife of the daughters of Barzillai the Gileadite, was called by their name. Okay, so there's these people who are priests, but they married the daughters of Barzillai, and they took that name upon them. So these sought their register among those who were counted by genealogy, but it was not found, so they were removed from the priesthood because they had a different name. So when they sought to have it by genealogy, the records of the genealogy didn't match up. And the governor said to them that they should not eat of the most set apart gifts until a priest stood up with the Urim and Thummim. Okay, so There's the set-apart gifts which the priests can eat of. The governor says, you guys, until we can have somebody get a decision from Yehovah, you will not eat of the set-apart gifts. Okay, later in that verse it says that they belong to your faithful one, whom you tried at Massah, with whom you contended at the waters of Meribah. Okay, so we know who they tried at Massah and with whom they contended at the waters of Meribah. Okay, Massah and Meribah, they tried Yehovah there. Okay. For Yehovah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, because you did not believe me to set me apart in the eyes of the children of Yisrael. Therefore you do not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. These were the waters of Meribah, because the children of Yisrael contended with Yehovah. So who did they try? Who did they contend with? It was Yehovah. Absolutely 100% it was him. Okay, so he's the faithful one. And then it says, who said of father and mother, I have not seen them. Yehovah said of his father and mother that he'd not seen them. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And these are the grammatical inconsistencies that it's speaking of here. It's very difficult to understand this, okay? Because we know who didn't speak, or who said of their father and mother that they had not known them or have not seen them. Exodus 32, 26 to 28 says, and Moshe stood in the entrance of the camp and said, who is for Yehovah? Come to me. And all the sons of Levi gathered themselves to him. And he said to them, thus said Yehovah, Elohim of Yisrael, each one put his sword on his side, pass over to and fro from gate to gate in the camp, and each one slay his brother, each one his friend, each one his relative. And so the sons of Levi did according to the word of Moshe, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. Okay, so when it says, who said of his father and mother, I have not seen them, he did not acknowledge his brothers or his own children, for they have guarded your word and watched over your covenant. This is speaking of Levi, not of the faithful one. Doesn't make sense in the Hebrew there. In the Septuagint version, this is what it says. And to Levi he said, give to Levi his manifestations in his truth, to the sacred one on whom they tested him in trial, and they reviled him at the water of dispute, which is what Meribah means. The one saying to his father and mother, okay, to Levi, he said, the one saying, so it's Levi which is being referred to here. It's not saying who they tested, whom they tried, who said to his father and mother. I have not seen you, and his brethren he did not recognize, and his sons he did not know. He guarded your oracles, and your covenant he observed. And again, it reminds me of the person that Ashley's been ministering to, okay, who's stealing. And they're stealing because they don't think that Yehovah would want their children to eat food that wasn't organic. Or he wouldn't want their children to not have this or to not have that if they need a new thing that it's just provided for them straight away. Okay, but we see what the actual way that we should be acting, how Yehovah applauds us. Okay, he did not recognize his sons. It's the word there is children. Sons and children is the same word. Okay, he didn't recognize his children. Rather, he guarded your oracles and your covenant he observed. That was what was important to him. Not your kids and what you think Yehovah should be doing for them. Luke 14, 25 to 26, we see Yeshua acknowledge this as well. It says, and large crowds were going with him and turning. He said to them, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters and his own life too, he's unable to be my disciple. He's unable to. That doesn't mean you've got to despise them. You've got to detest them. It's not what it's saying. It's saying when it comes to, it's either going to be Yehovah or it's going to be these things. If you choose those things, you're unable to follow the commands. You're unable to be Yeshua's disciple because you choose those things. They are idols in your heart above Yehovah. You hold them of greater importance than of keeping the word. Malachi 2, 1-9 says, and now, O priests, this command is for you, remembering that we're in the blessing for Levi. If you do not hear, and if you do not take it to heart to give esteem to my name, said Yehovah Sevaot, I have sent a curse upon you, and I have cursed your blessings. And indeed, I have cursed them, because you do not take it to heart. Just like Adam and Eve. Okay, they were blessed in the beginning, but they strayed, and then they were cursed. See, I have rebuked your seed and scattered dung before your faces, the dung of your festivals, and it has taken you away with it. And you have known that I have sent this command to you as being my covenant with Levi, said Yehovah Sevaot. My covenant with him was life and peace, and I gave them to him to fear, for he feared me and stood in awe of my name. This concept of life and peace, okay, my covenant with him was life and peace. We see this in the writings of Paul, this idea. He says, for the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the spirit is life and peace. And Paul doesn't just pluck things out of nowhere. He's like, oh, life and peace, that sounds great. Yeah, definitely. The life of the spirit, it's life and peace and wonderfulness and unicorns and rainbows. And he's quoting from the Tanakh, as he always does. Because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Elohim, neither indeed is it able. The mind of the flesh, death. Mind of the flesh does not subject itself to the Torah of Elohim. Mind of the spirit, life and peace, because it subjects itself to the Torah. The Torah of truth was in his mouth, and unrighteousness was not found on his lips. He walked with me in peace and straightness, shalom and straightness, and turned many away from iniquity. For the lips of a priest should guard knowledge, and they seek the Torah from his mouth, for he is the messenger of Yehovah Sevaot. But you have turned from the way, you have caused many to stumble in Torah. You have corrupted the covenant of Levi, said Yehovah Sevaot. And I have made you despised and low before all the people, because you are not guarding my ways and showing partiality in the Torah. Think of all the people who teach Torah, who cause people to stumble in it. Either they teach, oh, it's not important, it's about where you're at in your heart, and where you're at in your heart isn't shown by the things that you do. It's whether or not you say words with your mouth, and whether or not you really think in your heart that you love Yehovah. That's what it's about. Or we don't do that anymore. Oh no, when Yeshua came, that changed, and it's because of this, and it's because of that, and they've got all of their theology to explain these things. Okay, they're showing partiality in the Torah. Okay, they're not guarding his ways. We'll see later as well in when we look at writing from James, where he says, he who guards the commandments, he says, if you keep the royal law, love your neighbor as yourself, you do well. If you're showing partiality in the Torah, you've been found guilty as a transgressor again. So it's the sort of thing that he's drawing from. They teach your judgments to Yaakov and your Torah to Israel. Moshe continues, this is the blessing he gives to Levi. They put incense before you and a complete burnt offering on your altar. O Yehovah, bless his sufficiency. And the word sufficiency, it could be rendered different things depending on the context. It could be rendered wealth. It's basically whatever thing he needs at the time. Okay? His sufficiency is probably the best word. And be pleased with the work of his hands. Smite the loins of those who rise against him, and of those who hate him, that they rise no more. Of Binyamin he said, let the beloved of Yehovah dwell in safety by him, shielding him all the day as he dwells between his shoulders. I had lots of explanations for this. But he's calling Binyamin here the beloved of Yehovah. And he's saying, let him dwell in safety by him. Let him dwell in safety by Yehovah. And in some of these blessings, like the one for Naphtali, it's talking about where they actually physically dwell in the land. And this is what we see with Binyamin. Okay, this is where they were. Okay, when it says let him dwell by him, where was Yehovah dwelling? In the land. He's dwelling in Jerusalem. So let Binyamin dwell by him. And it says, let him dwell between his shoulders. Now, I've heard people say that it's to do with mountains. But I think, for whatever that's worth, that it's talking about Dan and Reuven. Okay? Because it's talking about where he dwells in the land. That's what he's dwelling between Dan and Reuven. So maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But that's what it means by let him dwell by him. And of Yosef he said, blessed of Yehovah is this land, with the choicest from the heavens, and the dew and the deep lying beneath, with the choice fruits of the sun, with the choice yields of the months. Okay, I'm going to go through an expanded teaching on the calendar next week. That's what we'll be doing instead of a Torah portion. This here, where it says months, the word is not chodashim. Okay, the word there is yeriachim, which is moons. So it's opposed to the sun. The choice fruits of the sun, the choice yield of the moons, the yeriachim. With the finest of the ancient mountains, with the choicest of the everlasting hills, with the choicest of the earth and all that fills it, and the good pleasure of him who dwelt in the bush, let it come on the head of Yosef and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. Okay, this is a phrase that we see in Yaakov's blessing as well. You've got Yaakov blessing the actual sons, and then we've got Moshe blessing their descendants here. But him who is separate from his brothers, we see there. His splendor is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horns of the wild ox. With them he pushes the peoples to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the 10,000s of Manasseh. Okay, Yosef, both tribes. When you notice, it's the choicest of this, it's the choicest of that, it's the finest. This is what the blessing for Yosef entails. And when we look at Yaakov's blessing as well, when he's blessing Yosef directly, and of course his offspring through him. Yosef is an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree, an offshoot of a fruit-bearing tree by a fountain. His branches run over a wall. And the archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were strong by the hands of the God of Yaakov. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. From the ale of your father who helps you, and by the Almighty who blesses you with the blessings of the heavens above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the limit of the everlasting hills. They are on the head of Yosef and on the crown of the head of him who is separate from his brothers. The phrase that we see again. Okay, so these great blessings that are poured out on Yosef. And I'm not into British Israelism or any of that sort of stuff, or we can see where the tribes went, absolutely. But it does make me think, with Ephraim and Manasseh, you look at the richer countries in the world. Some countries are in abject poverty and they're clearly under the curses. But some countries, you've got Britain and America, Germany, they're all extremely affluent countries. It just kind of makes me wonder about where that actually comes from, because it all does have a spiritual root. I wonder which ones of the tribes ended up in the different places. We see material blessings promised to other tribes as well. Yosef is just one of them. Of Zebulun, he said, rejoice, O Zebulun, in your going out, and Yissachar in your tents. Okay, that's good, isn't it? Yissachar, rejoice in your tents. They call peoples to the mountain. There they bring offerings of righteousness, for they draw from the riches of the sea and treasures hidden in the sand. Okay, so is this another material blessing? I think that probably is from what I read, but I think with these blessings is they could mean loads and loads of different things. Okay, you can draw certain things from Scripture, and some of it can be done reliably and others not so, but this seems to me pretty clear. Okay, they bring offerings of righteousness because they draw from the riches of the sea and the treasures hidden in the sand. Of Gad he said, blessed is he who enlarges Gad. He dwells as a lion and shall tear off the arm, also the crown. And he chose the best for himself, for there the portion of the lawgiver was hidden. Interesting. Okay, Gad chose the best for himself. Do we know about Gad? Okay, when it came to them being on the other side of the Yarden, he chose that land. He said that this land is good for flocks. It's good for herds. We want this land, basically. And it's interesting that it says there the portion of the lawgiver was hidden, because it is confirmed by Yehovah that that is their inheritance. But they came to the land and they thought the land of Israel on the other side was their inheritance. But they came to that land, they chose that land for themselves, and it ended up being their inheritance all along. So there the portion, same sort of word, the portion of Yehovah is his people, his inheritance is Yaakov. Okay, portion speaks of inheritance. And he came with the heads of the people, which he did. The righteousness of Yehovah he did, and his judgments with Israel. And of Dan he said, Dan is a lion's cub that leaps from Bashan. Just imagine being there, hearing this great thing about Yosef. It's going to be me soon. And of Dan, the lion's cub who springs from Bashan. Okay. Of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with pleasure and filled with the blessing of Yehovah, possess the west and the south. This is a bizarre thing for him to say to Naphtali. Now, as I said, some of it reflects where they actually were in the land. Okay, possess the west and the south. We've got this word being used here for possess, it's yirash. One of its meanings is to inherit. Okay, so again, that would suggest it's talking about where he would be in the land. When we look at it in the Septuagint version, it says very clearly, it says inherit. The Greek word means to inherit or to receive by a lot, which is what they did with the land. Okay, so it's very much talking in the Septuagint about what they received. But if we look on the map where they were, possessed the west and the south. It doesn't really seem to be accurate at all, does it? Even if we look at the millennial kingdom, this is where they are. Okay, the west and the south is certainly not where they are. But translational issue, I would suggest. Okay, the word for west is this, it's yam. Yam means sea. And the reason that it's translated as west is because if you think of the land of Israel, okay, what is to the west of the land of Israel? It's the sea. So it became the word for the west. Seaward, west, westward is one of its meanings here. I suggest that it means possess the sea because they did possess a sea. The Sea of Galilee was by Naphtali. So possess the west and the south seems a little bit strange. Possess the sea in the south. So what does it mean by possess the south? Because they couldn't be any further from the south. Okay, the word south is darom. Okay, it means the south wind, the south wind. Possess the south wind. It does sometimes refer to just the south, but possess the south wind. And if we look at where they are in the country, okay, who's going to get the south wind? The wind that goes south. It's going to be the people at the north, isn't it? So it's not possess the west and the north, it's possess the sea and the south wind, which is exactly what they did. And of Asher, he said, Asher is most blessed of children. Let him be accepted by his brothers and dip his foot in oil. Okay, it seems like a bizarre blessing. Let him dip his foot in oil. What's that talking about? Well, with Asher, we see from Yaakov's blessings as well. It says, bread from Asher is rich, and he gives delicacies of a king. So it speaks of material blessings. Again, oil is associated with wealth throughout the scriptures, but what is let him dip his foot in oil? Okay, well, you think of how they made wine, how they made grape juice. They tread the wine press. Did they tread the olive press as well? Is that something we see ever in scripture? Micah 6:14-15, you shall eat but not be satisfied, and your inside be empty, and you shall store up but not save. And what you save I shall give to the sword. And this is talking about the blessings that come, the blessings that they received would just be wasted away, basically. You shall sow but not reap. You shall tread the olives but not anoint yourselves with oil. So this whole thing of him dipping his foot in oil is a reference, as far as I can work out, to the olive press. That's what makes sense to me anyway. Your sandals are iron and bronze, and your strength is your days. This is one of those rare words, rare Hebrew words, sandals here. And the word is either going to be derived from a word that means shoes or sandals, or it's derived from a verb which means to bolt or to shut fast. And that kind of meaning would make a lot more sense to me. Your security almost are iron, or is iron and bronze, and your strength is your days. Makes a lot more sense than this. I don't know why the translators have gone with this, whether it's just been the more recognized view or what it is, whether they've just come to this and gone, what's this bizarre word here? What have other people done? We'll go with that. But I would suggest it's talking about their security, being iron and bronze, being strong. Your strength is your days. Oh, Yeshurun, there is no one like El riding the heavens to help you on the clouds in his excellency. Yeshurun is a poetic name for Israel. When you read Yeshurun, it's talking about Israel. The Elohim of old is a refuge, and beneath are everlasting arms. And he drives out, and the word is garash in the Hebrew, the enemy from before you, and says destroy. Thus Yisrael dwells, Shekan, in safety, like the Mishkan where Yehovah dwells. The fountain of Yaakov alone in a land of grain and new wine. His heavens also drop down dew. It's interesting that these two verbs are used here, because we saw at the beginning of this that Moshe is blessing the children of Israel. Okay, just like Elohim blessed Adam and Eve. At the end of the blessing, we see this driving out, the garash, and this verb shekan used in close proximity to one another. The end of the story of Adam and Eve, it says, and Yehovah Elohim said, see, the man has become like one of us to know good and evil, and now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. So Yehovah Elohim sent him out of the garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken, and he drove the man out, he grashed the man, and he placed, okay, but he placed there really means that he caused to dwell. It's this verb shekan. Cherubim at the east of the garden of Eden, and a flaming sword which turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. So right at the beginning of the narrative of Adam and Eve, to give him the blessing, then at the end you see these two verbs used, and it's exactly the same with this blessing that we see in this Torah portion. Blessed are you, O Yisrael, who is like you, a people saved by Yehovah, the shield of your help, and he who is the sword of your excellency, and your enemies are subdued for you, and you tread down their high places. And Moshe went up from the desert plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is opposite of Jericho, and Yehovah showed him all the land of Gilad as far as Dan, and all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Yehudah as far as the western sea. Again, this word here, western sea, Yam. And the Negev, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. And Yehovah said to him, this is the land of which I swore to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, saying, to your seed I give it. I have let you behold it with your eyes, but you do not pass over there. Of course, we've looked before at the fact that, well, if you went up to the top of Pisgah, you wouldn't be able to see all of those things. It'd be far too far away for you to be able to see. But Yehovah let him see it with his eyes. And it's re'eh. I let you re'eh it with your eyes. And it could mean I let you understand it, or I let you see it through a vision. There's numerous different things that it could mean. But one thing we know for sure is that from that point, he couldn't have seen all of this physically. And Moshe, the servant of Yehovah, died there in the land of Moab, according to the mouth of Yehovah. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. And no one knows his burial place to this day. This is interesting. Okay, no one knows the burial place of Moshe. Yehovah himself buried him there, and nobody knows where he was buried. We see in Jude 9, it says, but Michael, the chief messenger, in contending with the devil when he disputed about the body of Moshe. Okay, so people kind of think from this one line that the devil wanted the body of Moshe. He knew where it was. And we've got, the point that I really want to make is that people take doctrines from the vaguest scripture, and they'll hang on to the vaguest scripture, like when Paul says that women are to have their head covered with hair because of the angels, and then you get all sorts of wacky doctrines about what that means for the angels to, you know, be protected or whatever because of the woman's hair, or because she's got a head covering on? Is it because the witches think that your hair is an antenna to the angels? Is that what it is? So you've got to wear a material thing over your head? But people take such small snippets of scripture and they make so much of them. We don't actually know what it means that he disputed about the body of Moshe. It's a bit of a mystery for us. Maybe we'll find it sometime in scripture, but we don't actually know what it means. And scripture actually tells us no one knows where the body of Moshe is. And I would presume that such a statement includes Hasatan. Okay. Moshe was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his freshness gone. And the children of Israel wept for Moshe in the desert plains of Moab for 30 days. The days of weeping and mourning for Moshe were completed. And Yehoshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, for Moshe had laid his hands on him. And we see this in scripture, this imparting of a spirit by the laying on of hands. But we also see people receive the spirit without the laying on of hands. The children of Israel listened to him and did as Yehovah had commanded Moshe. Since then, no prophet has arisen in Israel like Moshe, whom Yehovah knew face to face. Not even Yeshua. Okay, Yeshua was a prophet like unto Moshe, but he didn't know Yehovah face to face, or at least we don't get any account of that. Okay, he didn't know him face to face at the Transfiguration, for example. So he didn't meet with him face to face. But face to face really means intimately anyway, and I'm sure Yeshua knew Yehovah intimately. For all the signs and wonders which Yehovah sent him to do in the land of Mitzrayim, before Pharaoh, and before all his servants, and in all his land, for all that strong hand and all the great fearsome deeds which Moshe did before the children and the eyes of all Israel. That's the end of the Torah. So we've reached another Torah cycle now, reached the end of it. In the third part, what I'm going to do is go through the Torah from the beginning and look at all of the things that the Torah has taught us as we've gone through it this cycle. So we'll take a quick break and come back these times. Thanks.